Hey, there's everyone. Hi, hello. Welcome to another instalment of Train Your Dog Month. I'm Patrina Firth from the APDT, and tonight I'm joined by Rizia Robertson. Hi, Rizia.
Hi.
Can we check that everybody can hear us and see us okay before we start? Just put a little reaction, say hi, feel free to chat amongst yourselves. Lorraine says hello. Hi, you know Lorraine Smith, don't you,
Oh,
Rizia?
hello, Lorraine. Hi.
So, Rizia, you're based up in the wilds of, is it Lothian?
Well, it's not really the wild, but it feels like it just now. Yes, I'm in West Lothian, up in Scotland. I'm only 6 miles out of Edinburgh, but
Oh,
we're up in the hills, and it's my first real winter here, so we're just getting used to the freezing cold and the snow and the floods. But yeah, I'm not too far. I'm quite central, but we're quite isolated where we are.
beautiful. Oh, lovely. So you've got snow already.
Oh, we've had snow for ages. We've had
Have
snow
you?
since December. Yeah.
Amazing. But the dogs like that, don't they?
Well, the Chime, the Tibetan Mastiff, I can't get her in. I even had to take her
Hmm.
dinner out to her yesterday because she wouldn't come in. She loves the snow. So,
I
yeah,
know.
it's perfect.
Oh, excellent. Well, you know my friend Jeff and his Tibetans, his TMs were always just wanting to sleep outside. The Huskies were Huskies, the Akitas, he said, were always like, "Let us in the house, we're cold," and the Tibetans were like, "We want to be outside."
Yeah,
So
that's exactly what it's like. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. If anybody here has not heard of Tibetan Mastiffs, they're not like your Neapolitans or your Italians or anything with all the skin. They're like huge, enormous bears, aren't they, Rizia? Furry.
Yes, they are. And very primitive, quite a primitive breed. So I'm learning a lot about
Mm.
them. They're not like other dogs, believe me. But they're lovely. I absolutely adore her. I would have 10 if I could.
Amazing. So how many dogs do you have now? Four, is it?
I've got four. I've got three German Shepherds. We've got Ellie, who's coming up for 10, and she's now the old matriarch. She's the smallest, but that's the one in the middle there. And then I've got Scorch, who was a rescue. He's a big black working line shepherd. He's my pride and joy. He's my only boy. And then we've got Chime, who's coming up for one on Tuesday. She'll be one on Tuesday. She's the Tibetan Mastiff. And we also have Little Force, who's another German Shepherd, and she's almost 6 months. So
Wow.
yeah, they've got two kind of puppies and two older dogs just now. So
Busy.
fun.
Okay. So you're going to be talking to us about what it's like being in a multi-dog household and how you can keep everyone in harmony, aren't you?
Well, I'm going to try anyway. I'll give you my experience of living in multi-dog households, and I hope you can learn something from it. I hope people learn something from it.
Perfect. All right. Well, if you're ready to go, I will move it on and we'll give
Okay.
it a go.
All right then. So just tell me when to start, and I'll go for it.
Yeah, you can start. There's your lovely dogs. Beautiful.
Yes, there's Shiloh and Rogan at the side, and Ellie in the middle. That was a couple of years ago, so they're no longer with us, the two boys. But we've got new memories to make, so that's fine. So yes, so welcome to Survive and Thrive in a Multi-Dog Household. I'm Rizia Robertson, and you've already heard about me, so I'll just skip through this bit. And let's go on to what we're going to talk about this evening. One is choices. It's why are you getting another dog, and the reasons for why will temper your choices as to what kind of dog you get. Um, I think number two is the initial introductions and the management that you really should have in place when your new dog first comes into the home, just to avoid any early pitfalls. And then we go into some problems that may and do arise when you've got dogs living together, and some of the ways you can prevent them from happening in the first place. And then training for harmony is what I like to train my dogs. I find through experience that These are the things that come in very useful when you've got a multi-dog household. And we'll talk about other things on the way, no doubt. As I digress, I'm good at that. So, um, okay, choose wisely. So why do you want another dog? There's lots of reasons, and none of them are wrong. You could just want, some more companionship. You might want a friend for your present dog. He may think he's a bit lonely. Maybe you're into sports and you need another dog to continue your sports. Maybe you work and you have working dogs and they have to become part of your household as well. Maybe you inherit them and you don't have much choice. But one of the things you always should consider, the first consideration when you're choosing when you decide to have another dog or you're choosing another dog, is your present dog. What's their temperament like? If they're not really happy with other dogs around them when they're outside, the chances are they ain't going to be that happy if you bring in another dog. But depending on how you deal with it, you can manage it, and sometimes it becomes very successful. I did that with one of my dogs before I knew any better. He was really reactive, and I thought, oh, I'll get him another dog, and he'll be happy. And weirdly enough, it did make him happy, and he did become a much calmer dog. But I wouldn't advise that at all. I did that when I didn't know any better. You can see in the pictures here that some of these dogs, they have been chosen for their sports. The guy in the Cajors obviously picked two dogs that he knew would run, and that's why he picked them. On the other corner, well, we have Chris's dogs here, Chris Mancini's, and we know that they do agility and they lots and lots of activities. So Chris wants nice sporty dogs. And then you've got working dogs that have to live with pet dogs. So up at the top we have we've got all the German Shepherds, a Lab, and a spaniel. Now, three of them were working police dogs, and the other two were pets. But up here, I don't know what it's like down south, but up here, the dog handlers get to keep the dogs when they retire. So my friend here, she amassed quite a few dogs, retired police dogs of hers. And they all lived very happily. Now, when I say to choose wisely and think about your other dog, you do have to think about the size of the dog that you've got just now, their energy requirements, their temperament, their genetics. There's so many different things you have to think about. And if you get a big dog to go with a small dog, there is a lot more management because your small dog can inadvertently get hurt by the big dog. So, most people try and sort of match their dogs. But as we see here, there are lots of exceptions to the rule, lots of exceptions. And the one in the top in the snow, well, there's an Akita and a Tibetan Mastiff. Now, you'd think, really, a Akita and a Tibetan Mastiff, along with a Sighthound, and two tiny little dogs. And I happen to know that these dogs all lived really happily together. They were pet dogs and a great relationship. In fact, that's it's Chimes breeder there. And the other dogs on the other side, again, a Jackawawa with a Rottweiler. Most people would say no, but again, that worked as well. So there are, there's lots of exceptions to the rules, but you're probably better off trying to match a dog to your present dog. Let's look at the implications of having one or more than one dog. Well, just say it's two dogs for the sake of argument. Two dogs is twice the money. It's not necessarily twice the work. It can sometimes be 10 times the work, depending on the situation, any situations that arise. It's much easier to get somebody to look after one dog for you if you want to go away or you need to go out or walk your dog. But two dogs is a different story, and you may end up having to rely on professional help. Now, at £15 a dog walk, that's £30 a day. That's quite a big chunk out of anybody's salary. So, you've got double the insurance, double the vet visits, double the food. So money is a consideration because keeping dogs isn't cheap now. And it's something that you should really think about. And also, just lastly on this bit, I think you should always have a contingency plan just in case things go wrong. Um, so many dogs are returned to rescue or to the former homes because they don't get on with the present dogs. And speaking from experience, it's really heartbreaking, and I really don't want anybody to have to go through this. I've had to seriously think about whether I can keep one of my dogs because she's not getting on with my older dog at all. She's still here, and I'm still working through it, but it's not easy. There's a physical toll, there's a serious mental toll on you. It's hard work. Um, so again, have a contingency plan about whether, just in case things do go wrong. So let's move on to that's just a quick recap of what we've been talking about. Um, okay, so you picked your dog. You've thought about all these things and you decide this is the dog for you. So you're heading home. Now, one of the first meetings should always take place neutral ground, preferably outside, but as long as it's neutral and there's plenty of space. Now, in the left hand corner, you can see there's someone. There's two people there, one with each dog. They're introducing these dogs, and there's a makeshift barrier there. Um, on one side, the lady's obviously maybe doing some pattern games or some scatters, but there's definitely something going on just to keep the dog occupied and nice and calm so they're not focused entirely on each other. The little one's having a look, but I have no doubt that the man there is keeping them occupied and doing all the right things. Um, so that's a great way just for them to meet. You would take down the barrier and let them have a sniff, etc. And then you would go on to, you can walk the dogs, to walking the dogs together. The top one is you would put the dog that doesn't mind the other dogs following, is quite a steady dog, and let the other one sort of walk behind. You'll be able to get plenty of scent from the dog and get the gist of what the dog's about, and you can slowly catch up and start parallel walking until they're walking together. And if you do go out with them, when you do go out with them, take them to places where there's something of interest rather than just them. So the top right hand picture, I took my dogs out to the beach and the tide had just gone out, and they were so intent on sniffing and just investigating all the scents with the tide going out that they couldn't have cared whether each one was there. And that's perfect. That's better than them focusing on each other all the time. It gives them a chance to learn to live together. So once you're home, actually coming into the home for the first time, there's various ways you can do it. You can bring them both in together and let them just chill out together if they're that type of dog. But one of my favourite ways to do it is to bring the new dog in first and let them have a good sniff around the house and then settle them in the area where they're going to be, whether it be in a pen or in another room. But they need peace and they need separation on the first night, just so that they can familiarize themselves with their new home. This is all quite scary to them. And then I bring in the other dog once the other one's safely away, and the older dog can sniff around and, again, follow where the scent's been and just get used to the scent being there. One of the things I do like to do, though, is I like to put the setup for the new dog in well in advance before they arrive, so that the other dogs are used to that being there. Sorry, that's my dog barking. I'm hoping he's going to run down to the gate and not bark up here. So again, that's another way that you can bring your dog in. This puppy pen setup is really good. And I love the way that you've got somebody in with the puppy so it's not lonely and someone outside with the older dog. Now, I know that older dog was sometimes just a little bit reactive, so they were being really cautious. And it paid off because now these dogs live together and they're ever so friendly and they've got a great relationship because she took her time. Stair gates are another great asset for multi-dog households because you can move them around. But it does mean that, at least your dog has a room, a whole room that they can just sort of wander about in safely. And one of the things that a lot of people forget about is transport. I've lost count of the number of people that will get a new dog and then about a month later they're rushing about trying to find a bigger car because their own car just isn't big enough. So, that's something to think about. If you don't want to get a bigger car, maybe get a small dog. But being able to travel separately at first is a good thing as well. And this picture of the crate that fits into the back of an estate car, and it's got a divider. It's very safe, and they're really, really useful for multi-dog households. So let's move on to potential problems and how to avoid them. Well, most multi-dog households, there's usually something, something will go on. There's usually a spat or it's never ever perfect, but what we do is we work around it and we manage it a lot of the time. So one of the first things I suppose we can go by is over boisterous play. The top picture, that actually looks like my dog's about to crucify the little one. But no, she took a flying leap at him. He just happened to be passing. And she took a ninja jump at him. And that was the result of the picture. But they did throw each other around. And my Tibetan mastiff and my big boy, Scorch, they play really rough. But they're well matched. And that's fine. It's when you have a mismatched pair and you've got the bigger one being over exuberant, that's when problems arise and the injuries can happen. So that's something to look out for. And one of the ways you can avoid that when you're out is engaging with your dogs and making the walk more about you and the dogs rather than leaving them to their own devices and getting into trouble. The next one is lead pulling. Now, that picture, it's a bit exaggerated, but, you can imagine that's quite a strong dog. She looks as though she's having a hard time keeping him from going forward. Now, imagine if you've got two big dogs like that and, they see something and they want to chase. Will you be able to hold on to them? That's one thing. Two is just a different matter, but again, it's still with the leash, is loose lead walking. If you have a puller already, the chances are your new dog will pull too. And you may end up, if they're big dogs, you may end up in the situation that, I know a lot of people do, is that you cannot physically walk two dogs at the same time, which means you have to walk them separately. Again, going into your time management. And one of the ways to overcome that is to teach them to walk on a loose lead separately. It has to be done separately before you put them together again. You can get dogmatics that will, help you in the case of huge discrepancy. If you're, a tiny little person and you've got big dogs like me. But I find that a harness with a front ring is very, very useful when walking multiple dogs. And I could walk my three with a combined weight of, I think it was 110 kilos through town with the harnesses on, and I didn't have any problem. The third thing is when you've got three German Shepherds, again, all Shepherds, up at the window. And this is house manners and visitors' manners and also barking. If it's bad enough one dog barking, but if you've got all three, and believe me, if you have one barker, 9 times out of 10, the rest of them will join in. It's pandemonium, and that's a hard one to stop. So, teaching them a quiet or enough is very beneficial. But also, if you've got visitors coming and, they're getting all excited, which most dogs do, three big dogs or three of any dog attacking your visitors, you're going to end up with no friends left. So, they do have to learn to be calm when visitors come. And what I would do there is I would put them in another room and bring them out one at a time once your visitors are settled and work on it like that. If you can teach them to go to their mat, all the better, and have them going to their mat and when visitors come, so you've got calm. But there are a few things you can do there. Um, the little one chewing, the little Jack Russell chewing the shoe, that's actually, I mean, it's not destruction, but I took that as a bit of um, separation anxiety. And a lot of people will get another dog because they think it'll alleviate the problems of their own dog being left alone. And it isn't always the answer. It very rarely is the answer. And you end up with two dogs getting stressed and having to work with both of them. So if that's why you're getting a dog, maybe rethink that and speak to a professional who specialises in separation anxiety and see what they think. One of the big, huge problems that I've come across personally with two of my dogs is resource guarding. And I do believe that many, many dogs are given up because of resource guarding. And when you think of it, the resource guarding is actually perfectly normal. We resource guard as humans. We resource guard our house, our car, our phone, everything that we own. We resource guard. Nobody else is going to get them. And we expect dogs not to do that, and which is a bit unfair. So what we have to do is ensure that we don't give them the opportunity or the reason to have to resource guard their precious, as I like to call it. If another dog comes into the house and they go and take things off them, that's going to exacerbate it, and eventually they're going to get angry about it, as we would as well. So my big rule for prevention of resource guarding is there's either loads of everything or nothing. And so if I want to bring a ball out, I'll bring out 20 balls. So there's so many that they don't need to resource guard them. Because if you bring one ball out amongst, two or three dogs, yeah, it's going to be a problem. One bone, one toy. So lots and lots, or nothing. The place is clear. You have to tidy up. And you can work with resource guarding with dogs, but I find it very difficult. But you can make it better, but it's better to prevent it rather than cure it, because it's difficult. And the last one is out and out sort of reacting to each other. Dogs actually not getting on together, where they actually have fights and damage is caused. They injure each other. Now, you can have a one-off fight and they can cause damage and then everything's cool. And I know I shouldn't generalize, and I'll probably get a row for this, but I've found that male dogs, they can have a spat and the next day they're fine. It's as if it never happened and they just carry on as usual. That doesn't apply to every male dog, by the way, but it did apply to mine. On the other hand, I've found that when bitches have a problem with a dog, it tends to stick and they hold the grudge. And that's when, sometimes it just you can't get round it. And you either have to go into strict management or you have to think about rehoming them, unfortunately. But, that's when things get really bad. And the thing is, they might be perfectly fine in another home and go on to live a lovely life because that other dog that they absolutely hate isn't there. So, yeah, and then what we're going to do now is let's have a talk about, I think it's my training tips. Yeah, training for harmony. So, these are the things I like to train my dogs. I've learned through the years that these are the useful things for my dogs. Everything else is just icing on the cake. So, I like to teach my dogs name recognition. I think I mentioned this. That's really important to me and to the dogs because they know their name. So if I call their name, instantly they look up and I can either give them a cue or ask them to do something. And they know that I'm talking to them. And the other dogs, they don't care because I'm not speaking to them at that point. The younger ones took a little bit of time to, recognize that. But once nothing happens, if you don't call their name. They soon ignore it when you call the other one's name. One of the most important things, and I mentioned this already, is to settle, teaching your dog to settle or go to the mat. And you'll see up at the top right-hand corner, you've got two lovely little dogs, and they're lying on their mats. And the beauty about this is you can take their mats anywhere and ask them to lie on them, and they will do it. And there's a familiarity about it. And I don't know about other dogs, but certainly my own, my puppy Force, she can be going around 10 miles, 20 miles an hour, just running about, totally over threshold. I bring out the mat, and straight away she lies on her mat and she's calm. So, it does have a lot of benefits. Wait your turn is another one, which is important because I can't have them all rushing me. So my dogs know to wait. Can be standing, giving them a treat. Like Rizia Van Fleet is at the bottom with her dogs. She's working on eye contact. And they're all waiting nicely, and they will get the reward one at a time, no doubt. Leave it's useful for any dog, but it's something that I like to teach as well. One of the most useful things is a positive interrupter. Now this is really handy. Instead of wading in and sort of splitting things up, if you notice that things are getting a bit out of hand, or you want to stop something, you can use a positive interrupter for it. And one of two of my two older dogs will come to me for ready. And what ready means, and what I've trained them, is ready means they're going to get a scatter of treats. And I've used it so often with them, it's inbuilt now, and it's kind of the default. As soon as they hear it, their head lifts and they come over. For my younger two, I've used pattern games, and I use a lot of 1, 2, 3 with them. And as soon as they hear 3, that's it, they stop as well. So, that saves a lot of, things escalating, or, the dog's getting into trouble if I can do that. Door manners. You can't have a number of dogs and have them pulling you out the door when you're ready to go for a walk. So you do need them to, sit nicely while you go out, and you can start your walk off in a nice, calm manner. We've gone over loose lead walking and how important it is, and also recall. I find recall very, very important, and I need to teach that to them separately, just so that I know that they're not following the other dogs back, and they won't do it if they're on their own. But to let a number of dogs off leash, you have to have control of them, because it's not just one dog coming back. You have to watch them, all of them, and make sure everyone comes back when you ask them. So a good recall is really important. And this is going to take time, because you need to train these dogs one at a time. And unless you have a really good settle, or they're trained on their mat to stay there while you're training the other dog, you're going to have to put them either in another room or in a crate while you train that one dog while it's their shot, because you can't do it with all the other dogs milling about. You can't proof it, and you can't get the quality that you need when other dogs are milling about. So it is a time constraint, but it's time well spent on that. And enrichment. Well, everybody knows about enrichment by now, I would have thought. But I think it's really, really important when you have a multi-dog household. You can't have the dogs just lying about bored all day, because they will get into trouble. So shared enrichment is a great thing. But it doesn't have to cost money. It doesn't have to take, a lot of effort on your part, because enrichment is anything that your dog enjoys doing. And you'll see on the left-hand side, it's all the same collies, but they have a grand life. I think they're duking for carrots there. They have a puzzle toy, and of course, collies, nothing's too difficult for them. So they're playing Jenga. Is it Jenga they're playing? I think so. And then we've got, well, there's my son with a load of German Shepherds, and I think a flat coat retriever there. They used to like swimming, so he would take them to the beach. And off they would go, and that's a huge big wave in front of them. And they all got swamped that day just after that picture was taken, but they absolutely loved it, and they went back in for more. The top ones, it just looks like a bit of waste ground, but there's different textures there. There's lots of things there for dogs to find interesting. So, sometimes what we think is not interesting, the dogs will love. For instance, my dogs in the city, they used to love pavement walks. And just a walk round the block was, the highlight of their day. I used to take them up into the hills and all the rest, but no, they loved their pavement walks because it was a bit like Facebook from them. They could just go around sniffing and tell, what all the dogs in the area were doing, etc. And the bottom two are activities. Well, the collies, the Beardy and the Border Collie, um, they were born and bred to work sheep, and luckily they live on a sheep farm, so they get to do that, and they're really happy doing it. They love it. And down at the bottom, well, we've got a bit of enrichment for both human and the dog here. With sports. Now, I happen to know this poodle absolutely loves agility. And as long as your dog loves the sport and is really keen to do it, that's a great form of enrichment for both of you. So, it's worth your while looking at also different activities. There's agility, but there's a whole load of activities that have sprung up now. For instance, I'll just go off here. There's agility, there's man trailing, there's scent work, hoopers, gun dog training, obedience, tracking, flyball, canicross, dock diving, and there'll be loads more. I just didn't put them all down. I couldn't think of them, but there's loads and loads of activities you can do with your dog that match your physicality and your dog's. So, for instance, for older dogs, scent work and hoopers are great. Younger ones, agility, man trailing suits everything. Find something that you like and see if you enjoy doing it. And lastly, we have the success stories, of which there are so many success stories. Look at how happy these dogs are at the top, like the shepherds and the I think it's a husky. It might be a Northern Inuit, actually. I'm not sure. But when it works, it really, really works, and it's lovely to see them together. That your dogs are happy when they want to sleep together and cuddle up. And I mean, look at the one at the top, little Chihuahua with the big two bully breeds. How many people would think that would work? And it does. And the ones at the bottom, they're just three of a number of dogs. I can't remember how many dogs this lady's got. I think they belong to Kira. And they have a brilliant life as well. There's a lot, and there's bigger dogs involved there as well. I know they're all different sizes, but they all seem to live in harmony. And then there's my three at the top, and this was one of the last pictures that were taken. And like I said, Shiloh, he was reactive. I thought, oh God, he's never going to like another dog. Rogan, the black one, came along and changed his mind about things, and they were bonded for the whole of their lives. The picture at the bottom, that's them wide apart. They used to walk hip to shoulder. There was no space in between them, and that's how they went on their walks. And unfortunately, Shiloh died suddenly just before lockdown in 2020, and I really worried about how Rogan was going to cope. And bless him, he decided to leave us 3 days later and join his brother for a completely different reason, and again, totally unexpected. So, unfortunately for me, but unfortunately for them, they still have each other. So yeah, there's plenty of success stories, and if you are thinking about getting another dog, you can catch me. You can find me on Facebook and on my website. Just give me a shout, and I'd be really happy to give you any advice that you might need. And if you do get another dog, I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoy mine. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Sorry, that's my Tibetan mastiff. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you fine. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
You can hear Chuck barking as well. Sorry.
That was great. I thought it was really interesting that you put in about resource guarding, because we tend to think of resource guarding as something that dogs do to humans, or dogs have more of a thing, but actually between dogs it's a very natural and normal behavior to want to protect your resources, but it can get really nasty.
It's quite difficult to control the other dog as well. I mean, it's a lot easier to work with dog human resource guarding because we can control our actions. But I find it's quite a tense situation. What I did find was that our last dogs with the resource guarder, if he was guarding something, they would just avoid him. They learned just to avoid him. Because it wasn't anything they wanted. So he would go off into a corner and resource guard fresh air. And, they would just keep away. But it's not ideal and you don't want it. You don't want it to happen. It's horrible when it does.
Aww. So just some comments, really. Sarah said, I've always had a mixed household until recently. Since I lost my older boy, I've found my 3 bitches are far more prone to bickering.
Yeah. Well, I find my 3 bitches, I'm used to mostly dogs, mostly males, and maybe the odd bitch. This is the first time I've had 3 bitches. And I do find that our male, Scotch, he has a very calming influence on them. I'm a bit worried about what will happen when he goes. I might have to get another big boy in. But yes, I think that. But any dog, whatever sex, when a dog leaves, if a dog dies, the dynamic changes anyway, and they get a bit unsettled, and they're probably missing him as well. So it can sometimes just take a bit of time to settle down. But if you lose the peacekeeper, that can be a problem. There's always, the splitter upper, the one come in and sort of go, no, that's enough. Then you've got a problem. One of the other ones has to take their place.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not ready. Yep.
Yeah. A little question from Paul. Hi both, lovely thoughtful input. Hope this question makes some sense. A fellow dog owner took in a refugee recently who also had a dog she has travelled with. Just wondering about experience of adding dogs to a home who essentially have different owners in the same house. Any thoughts? Someone's got some thoughts.
She's not going to stop. There's something out there. Well, I mean, there's no reason why it can't work, but the owners have to work together. They have to sit down and work out a plan. And there can't be any favoritism either. Do you know what I mean? That it's your dog, my dog. They have to be completely objective about the behaviour, what they see. And there's no reason why it can't work. It's probably not ideal, but if the both of them are on the same page and they're both working with their dogs, then yeah, it can be okay. It depends on the dogs as well.
Yeah. I would just do lots of getting them to station, like Rizia said, getting them to be in each other's presence but far enough apart and managed that they can cope with being close together.
If they're bickering, Scotch, if they're bickering, if they're bickering, so my son, that was he was barking at, she's barking at my son, he's keeping her quiet. If they're bickering, you get barriers. You can get, you just create barriers and have their private space so they can't actually interact until they're at a stage where they can. But again, like I said, it depends entirely on the people that are working with the dog and what the dogs are like. At
Mm.
least if they're two separate, at least they can take them into their own rooms at night to sleep with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they can spend time with them. Probably wouldn't hurt for each other to spend time with each other's dogs as well to get to know them. That would be one of the things I did actually forget to mention is as an owner, as someone taking on the responsibility and the welfare of more than one dog, it really is our duty to learn about body language. And it's really, really important when you have a multi-dog household because they're not going to shout out and tell you this is happening, but you learn your own dog's body language, and that way you can understand when they're under stress, they're not happy, or when they are happy, and it helps to prevent conflicts.
Mm.
If you can step in just before, or you can see what's causing the stress and remove it and make sure it doesn't happen again. And the same thing in your environment, sort of check out all the trigger points in your environment, like bottlenecks going, if you've got a narrow hall going out to the door, um, the outside door, sometimes, when dogs are going, they know they're going out, they get all excited. They can get too excited and redirect on each other. Also when, like I said before, when people come to the house, when you come home, they're over aroused. Again, sometimes that can cause redirection and they can go for the other dog just because they're overwhelmed, over aroused. So that there's lots of, there is quite a lot that we should be doing to ensure that everything's as smooth as it can be. And also, one of the things you really do have to learn, whether you ever have to use it or not, but you need to have some kind of know how, is how to break up a fight safely in case there is one. There are different ways to do that. Um, I don't know if you want me to go into it here, but there's you do have to learn to do that safely from your point of view as
Mm.
well. I just wanted to add that in. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and also, if you have got a problem, seek professional help before it escalates, before it gets to the point where it's just too bad. If you see something happening, get help there and then, and just stop it in its tracks, and then you
Mm.
won't have a big problem to deal with.
Yeah. Um, I've just got a little question from Kathy, maybe. I walk a spaniel who has a sprudel move into his house, and I can see he's so unhappy, but I'm not sure what to do. He needs to jump in the car or go through a door first, and he started being grumpy.
So, what do you mean he needs to jump in the car? So he likes the spaniel likes to be first, or the other dog.
I think it sounds like the sprudel maybe pushes in and is maybe a bit of a bully. Would that be
Mm.
right, Kathy? Is that what I'm picking out from that, maybe? That's what I would maybe think. It's difficult when it's not your dog as well because you can
Yeah.
you can say things to the owner, but it's not your job. But in that instance, if they were the owner, what sort of things might you advise, Rizia?
Oh, well, I would definitely be teaching the puppy some self-control. I would be doing more work with the puppy while the other dog, is a bit more is loose. I would keep the dog, the sprudel. I would probably put him, if it's a case of he's going through the door for, he's pushing out first, and I would do some on lead work at the door and just get him to sit and just sort of wait. Plenty of food, lots of nice things, and a release word. I would teach him a release. So I would teach him a stay and a release. Um, it depends on how old this sprudel is,
Mm.
because if it's young, I've got forces like that. My puppy just now, she gets a bit sort of woo. We call her zippity, and she needs more more impulse control, more just wait your turn. And I need to do more. I know what to do with her, but I just need to do more of it. And I think when you've got um a younger pup or young, an adolescent. I'm not sure if it's a puppy or, it's a wee bit more difficult for the older dog. So yeah, lots of impulse control, lead work, weight. Even if the mat train them, and they can, there's loads of calming exercises they can do for that. Again, it's quite difficult when somebody says something. I need to see what's happening, or at least have a good idea what's happening, what the dog's
Yeah.
like.
I think dogs being taught to wait their turn while you do something with another dog is always going to be useful.
Yeah,
So you could
yeah.
suggest they do that. Yeah. All right, Rizia. Well, we've got to finish there. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add, just as a last? Anything else you want to say about that?
About multi-dog households.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? They're hard work, and expensive. But I absolutely love having lots of dogs. It's amazing. It's great from my point of view. There's always somebody to cuddle. There's always every dog's different, so I can do different things with each dog. But one of the things I really do enjoy is I love watching their relationship develop as well. So yeah, it's if you want to do it, but just be prepared. It's hard work, but it's really, really rewarding.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much. And thanks everyone for listening. So we're back tomorrow at 6, and we've got all the information you need to become an APDT member. If you have a little look at the description of this video, Rizia actually put on here that doing her APDT assessment was one of the hardest things she's ever done. Well, I hope you enjoyed it.
I've done a few assessments now, and yes, it was hard. But I would just like to say I absolutely love being part of the ABTT. It's a brilliant organisation, and if anybody is thinking about joining, I would.
Perfect.
Definitely.
Okay, so join me and some of the APDT team tomorrow night at 6, and we'll be answering your questions and doing nice little chat to talk to you and tell you what it's all about and how you can become a member and your benefits and things. So look forward to seeing some of you then. Thanks, Rizia. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you, Patrina. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.